Welcome to the 6th Annual Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame induction ceremony. When I say, as I customarily would at this moment, how much of an honor and a privilege it is for me to be here, I'd be making a tremendous understatement. The caliber of our honorees this evening is remarkable. With Bob Burke and Sam Freshman, we have one of the most amazing induction classes that we've had to date. But this evening also conjures up for me memories of the past 5 years behind us, and of some of the great ones who we've honored in the past and who are no longer with us, dating back to our first 2 Hall of Fame inductees, Bill Wilson and Don Cole. These 5 wonderful years are full of great memories for me, and this event has come to be one of the most meaningful events in my calendar year. Every year when I break out my calendar and look ahead to this event, I do so with a great deal of fondness and anticipation. After 5 wonderful years, I can say that this 6th visit to the California Club will be my last time standing in front of this beautiful room, in this historic building, with this wonderful group of people, on this amazing night, as the president of this great organization. I'll be retiring at the end of this year to be succeeded by my fellow board member and a great friend, David Butler. As I prepared for this evening, I thought about a conversation that I had with a colleague of mine, where we spoke about the concept of the cycle of life. No, I'm not talking about the circle of life, and I'm not going to break out in an Elton John impression. But in the cycle of life, the cycle is broken down into 4 distinct components. The first phase is growth and development. The second phase is building our careers and families. The third phase is our prime years, when we're at our peak capacity. And the fourth phase, well, that's kind of just a giant fuzzy question mark. And it's a question that each one of us has to answer, which is, what are we going to do with that 4th phase of our lives? What I find amazing about both Bob Burke and Sam Freshman is that they are taking full advantage of that 4th stage of their lives. If you rewind back to the beginning, these 2 men have a lot in common. They're both dual degree holders from Stanford and from the Stanford Law School. When you look at them today, Bob, throughout his career and still today, remains the consummate educator. He's returned to Prologis and has launched PLD Ventures, offering the next generation a chance to benefit from his tutelage and guidance. In fact, I went online today and found an internship posting that was posted about 180 days ago for an intern to join and work as Bob's right hand. I'm wondering if I can still apply for that position, Bob. It sounds pretty exciting to me. Sam is the consummate networker and community builder. His commitment and that of Ardith, his wife, to the Jewish community and the real estate community here in Los Angeles are only matched by his dedication to Stanford, which is remarkable and very respectable. It's not only man that has a life cycle. Organizations do too. SPIRE, in this 6th year, is clearly transitioning from that stage 1, early development, to stage 2, the building years, the years in which the growth occurs and the organization takes the foothold that it will ultimately occupy into the future. With the succession of our executive director, and I thank Elizabeth Youngblood for stepping into Andy's shoes and doing such a wonderful job this year, and I'm excited to see the future with her at the helm of the organization, and with her team, including Jennifer Heaphy, who's been so instrumental in putting together these events year after year. I see that the staff of SPIRE is well positioned for the years ahead. With the succession of our esteemed chairman, Sam Freshman, whose shoes are being filled by Louis Cohen from Chicago. And he told me I had to say go Cubs tonight, but we'll stay away from that.
Yeah.
I think the Dodgers are going to take it anyway. Let's not tell him. I feel that with the succession from Sam to Lou, the organization is very well positioned at the very top for the years ahead. And finally, with the succession of the presidency later this year, we will complete that cycle. And it's a very important step in the life cycle of an organization when you can make that transition and keep things flowing smoothly and allow the organization to grow to the next level. And when you couple that with the growth of an amazingly strong board of directors, the financial backing of our founding core sponsor, Alan Matkins, and I'd like to recognize and thank Fred Allen, Rick Mallory, and the others from the firm who've been with us literally since day one and have made this organization possible. And with the addition of new corporate sponsors, such as our second core sponsor, New City Group, led by Lily Wang, who's one of our members. The organization is a very strong place financially as well. SPIRE is also thriving in the achievement of its mission. If you recall from previous such discussions, those three pillars of SPIRE's mission are: one, alumni networking. The organization has grown to 1,900 members across the country and around the world. There were 22 regional events this past year around the country. And the Stanford Real Estate Council is reaching its cap of 100 members and will be forming a waiting list in this coming year as a result of tremendous demand for participation in this elite group. And we're very much looking forward to our SREC conference on campus again this year, the first week of November. Pillar number 2, student outreach. With our resume book that will be distributed in November, a thriving mentorship program that paired 80 students with mentors last year in the real estate industry, and with grants to students to support independent research projects, like PhD student Daniel Hall, who is featured in your tribute books. We're making a lasting impact on campus and in the lives of these students and creating opportunities for them to be prepared for and enter the real estate industry. Third pillar, educational program development. With a course grant to the Urban Studies Department to fund a course focused on housing issues in the United States, and by continuing our ongoing support of the foundations of new institutes at Stanford, such as the Sustainable Urban Systems Program, which is growing out of the Civil Engineering Department. Again, we're making a lasting impact on the landscape of Stanford University and shaping its future ahead. In fact, Elizabeth will share with you later on this evening how you and the audience can both participate in and benefit from new initiatives related to sustainable urban systems at Stanford. The bottom line is that this is a great time for SPIRE. As I transition from the presidency to a continuing role on the board of directors, I know the organization is healthy and thriving. I know it is in good hands. And I'm excited just to be a member and to be a part of the bright future that's ahead of us in the organization. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the evening ahead, and thank you very much for these years.
I'm Elizabeth Lambert Youngblood. I am the new executive director for Stanford Professionals in Real Estate. I am excited to be here this evening. It's been a busy year as I've taken the helm from my predecessor who's with us tonight, Andy Wahlberger. So Chad laid the groundwork for what I wanted to talk about tonight, and we have a great group of people in the room, not all of whom are necessarily Stanford alumni and not necessarily members of SPIRE. But I want to let you know that SPIRE not only adds value directly to the Stanford community, but to the real estate community as a whole. There's a new degree program at Stanford called Sustainable Urban Systems. It's the first degree of its kind under the Civil Engineering Department that's going to be a multidisciplinary degree that focuses on improving global cities of the future. And as part of that, imagine you've got civil engineers, you've got lawyers, you've got students from the business school, all coming together to talk about how to improve cities of the future. And what's really interesting about the program is it's going to be a project-based approach to learning. So they're going out right now and sourcing projects in which the city is particularly involved. So you've got the urban planners, the cities, and then developers. They're sourcing those projects that Stanford students will be able to work on for a course of a year. If anybody in the audience tonight has an interesting project that might involve the city of Los Angeles, let us know. We'd love to introduce you to the faculty at Stanford and get some great Stanford talent on your team. Secondary to that, we've got incredible, as part of our student outreach, we have incredible entree into current students at Stanford, undergraduates and graduate schools. We would love to help promote them for working with you for summer internships, full-time work after school. And in the meantime, if you'd like to mentor them as part of our mentorship program, that would be a great win-win for all of us. So I'm glad you're here tonight, and I hope that you'll take the energy that you have from tonight and help us help Stanford, and let Stanford help you in your own business pursuits. Thank you so much. I'm going to introduce Chad Hagel.
So now the fun part begins. Bob Burke. As I said earlier on in the evening, Bob is the consummate educator, and I am one of the many people who has had the great opportunity to be a student of him in one form. About 5 years ago, I approached Bob along with my former business partner, Damon Dunn, and we were looking to raise an equity fund after developing successfully for about a decade using private capital. And in the course of our discussions with Bob really skillfully articulated for us the difference between entrepreneurial achievement and institutional pedigree. Bob's calm, quiet demeanor, in his words, that was a very nice way of saying, no fund is ever going to give you fellas a dime. But Bob, I'm here tonight to tell you that we didn't give up. We pounded the pavement. We knocked on every door we could, and after all of that, you know what? You were right. We didn't get a dime. But it's just an example of the education that Bob continues to give to those of us in the development community and how valuable a part he is of the fabric of the Stanford Alumni Network and the fabric of the real estate industry. So I hope you all enjoy the tribute to Bob.
So when you first meet Bob, he looks like a button-down lord, but I can assure you I've never laughed as hard as I have with Bob over 32 years of being a partner and a friend.
When you first meet him, he's extremely serious, and you would think this fellow is not going to smile anytime soon. But when you get to know him, not only do you find this is a warm, kind person, but you also discover this incredible sense of humor.
He's a great explainer. He has the patience to understand when he talks to someone where they are and to meet them there and work through whatever the issue is.
I was a little afraid of him when I first met him. It was early in my career. I was a young landscape architect. Didn't really know what I was doing. Had never really encountered someone as whip smart as he was. But by the end of our work together, I just developed such an enormous reservoir of respect for him.
So I'm Bob Burke.
So as best as I know, Bob grew up in Coos Bay, Oregon. I think his father was a small businessman, and I think his mother was a teacher.
Growing up in a small town does have a lasting impact. You know, they say you can take a boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy.
I think he was the high school quarterback of the year in Oregon. Came to Stanford, was a football player actually, among other things, joined the fraternity.
So I have very fond memories of my undergraduate years, more so than my law school years, which followed after that.
So if you look at Bob's career, it's a number of 10-year segments, and it's because Bob gets impatient with things, and he's really great at starting up businesses. He likes businesses that change a lot, but when a business stabilizes, Bob slowly starts losing interest in it and moves on to do something else, which is entrepreneurial and exciting.
Bob is a serial enthusiast. He loves to jump into things and learn everything about them. And, you know, he generates ideas constantly.
And if you really look at his career, starting out as a poverty lawyer in Latin America right after law school, to being a lawyer in San Francisco with Morrison Foerster, to leaving Morrison Foerster for a shopping center development company as an in-house counsel, and then coming back to Morrison Foerster only to move to Washington and start their office in Washington, and then coming back and running the firm, but then joining what became AMB, and then running AMB as an advisory firm, and then a fund management firm, and then taking it public. Each one of these things are really a, 7 to 10 year interval of time.
Why Bob was so successful is people trusted him. Bob used to say, and the real estate business is full of people who are promoters and self-interested, and Bob used to say, we're real estate professionals, and our job is to put our clients' interests ahead of our own.
So Doug and Hamid are fond of kidding me about the fact that I don't know anything about real estate, which is remarkably true in certain respects. And I've concluded that one thing I'm good at is selecting partners to do the kind of work that they do.
But we shouldn't stop there, because after AMB went public and shortly after that, Bob retired from the day-to-day management of the company. He started another very successful business with Metropolitan and sold that business recently. And we've now invited them to come back to Prologis, the old AMB, to help us with our venture investing business in technology relating to real estate operations. So again, he's back in working with young people and doing something very different and very interesting.
I have enjoyed being managed by Bob over time, and I've learned a lot about being a manager. One of the first things he said to me when I started working with him, and he says this to everybody at Metropolitan until you get it, he says, I don't want to hear what they told you. I want to hear what you think. And you hear that from Bob and you're like, me? You want to hear what I think? And what it does is it completely inspires you to do your homework, because you want to give him a good answer, and over time to really be a good critical thinker.
Bob has a real skill of mentoring our young up-and-coming leaders, and he enjoys that, and people really enjoy working with Bob, and they look up to him as their mentor, and he plays that role very effectively.
Over time, he becomes the go-to person for many people in his life. So even though he says he's slowing down on business all the time, he has so many people coming to him.
One of the things about Bob is he tries to retire and he fails repeatedly.
And I didn't have a real job for 2.5 years. And that seemed fine initially. I thought I would go out and do a lot of volunteer work and take advantage of the fact that I'm kind of a Renaissance man with a lot of interests. And then I went out and joined some volunteer organizations, and they all took one look at me and said, we want you to work on our real estate committee or our real estate projects. So I came to the depressing conclusion that I'm really not a Renaissance man. I'm really a real estate guy. And I ended up doing a lot of real estate related work in my volunteer life, which I continue to do to this day.
The 92 to 2000 timeframe, when I was at Stanford Management Company working closely with Bob Burke, one of the main projects that we worked on was this $500 million series of projects around Sand Hill Road, right next to the university and the Stanford Shopping Center, and what is now called Stanford West Apartments and the V. He was always available. He had a full-time job. He was one of the principals and founders of A&B, which was a thriving public company, a REIT, and very serious business, but he was always available to help and listen and counsel.
So that work's been very gratifying at Stanford, but when I was on the board of trustees, I was chairman for 7 years of what's called the Land and Buildings Committee. So once again, they turned to me and said, "You're a real estate guy, so you do this." In 1996, I was asked by two prominent business people in San Francisco if I would volunteer to serve as the lead negotiator on behalf of UCSF to try to find a potential campus for UCSF in San Francisco, which they had outgrown their Parnassus campus. And the city was at risk of losing UCSF.
He was able to get Catalyst Corporation to give 44 acres of land pro bono. So that immediately enabled UCSF to dream big.
So that was very gratifying. And I've sometimes joked that it's the most successful real estate transaction I ever negotiated, but unfortunately I didn't get paid for it. Kathy and I and our family moved into the Presidio in 2002. And then in 2005, I was invited to join the board of what's called the Presidio Trust, which was responsible for essentially redeveloping the Presidio as a national park, but also residences and also several million square feet of commercial property.
And when I first met Bob, let's just say I had a pretty simple stereotype in mind about what a developer meant, and what they were about. And I think for many of us who came to work here, we were really inspired by the national park values of the Presidio. And he really opened my eyes to the power of private sector approaches to transforming public assets and really shaped my thinking. Not only was Bob committed to a public vision for our work, he put his money where his mouth was. And he and his family made a very generous gift to the Trails campaign that resulted in an unbelievable overlook, the National Cemetery Overlook, which is set up above the National Cemetery in the Presidio. It has played a really important role in transforming the Presidio.
You can have a career and work hard at it and do it well and be proud of it, but you can then take whatever benefits that bestows on you and find time in your life to also go out and do volunteer work. Today, and really for many years, I have segmented my life into three what I sort of think of as portfolios. I guess that's because I'm an investor at heart. So there's my family, which is more important than either my career or my volunteer work. And my wife and I have been married for 25 years, so I value that enormously, and I know I'll value it even more so in the years ahead.
When we got married, we knew that we would have children. Bob had already had children, so I had 2 stepchildren right away. But he was willing to do it again, and I think he imagined he was going to have a little daughter, and that would be that. But in fact, I called him at my 3-month appointment in my first pregnancy, and we discovered that we were having twins. And they, of course, turned out to be two boys. We had another boy 6 years later, but he's an exceptional father because he's really willing to sit and listen.
I don't try to dominate my children. They're quite different than I am, and each is finding his own way. So I assume they will not end up doing the things that I did, and that's just perfectly fine. And I try to explain to them how one navigates a career, and I can't explain it because hopefully I've made it clear that much of my career happened partly through planning and partly by accident or just good luck. I've had a lot of good luck. I've co-founded 3 companies, and in each case I've had partners who were as capable or more capable than me, and we worked together to accomplish the things we accomplished. And I would never try to do it any other way. I wouldn't trust myself to go out and do it single-handedly. And I think young people today ought to think long and hard about that. If they can find a friend with whom they're compatible and who has complementary skills, not the same skills as them, but complementary skills, that's the best way to put together a winning team.
Those videos always make me, we do tribute videos for all of our inductees, and they are really, really special to get to make behind the scenes. And I have to say Bob's was particularly touching. He is so beloved and respected by both his family and his partners, and you're going to keep hearing it over and over again, but I saw it. It was tangible, it was palpable. So Bob, thank you. Welcome to the Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame. So it's befitting that a number of the companies that Bob helped found, that one of his partners is here tonight. Doug Neff is the founder and the president of IHP Capital Partners. He got to know Bob through Doug Abbey. Doug is Abby is the A in AMB, and I guess Doug, they went to school together, the two of them, and then ultimately met Bob in the early 90s, and they've been business partners in IHP Capital since the mid-90s. So, and that firm, it's interesting, it's another one where the original founders and partners have liked one another and gotten along with one another well enough to continue their business relationships in a very successful way through today. And again, I think that's Bob's knack in finding amazing business partners. So I welcome you to the podium to introduce Bob and his family.
Thanks so much. This is an incredible evening for all of us. I'm not really sure how to follow the video. It was pretty amazing, and Bob is truly amazing. Yeah, but actually it's understated because, we're an example of that. We're a little company down in Orange County, and Bob's been was one of our founders. Don Grant sits here next to him, and then Doug Abbey, now of Silver Film fame, earlier here was our fourth. And we founded a company that specialized in the residential investment business. We now manage about $1.5 billion of real estate around the U.S., and we've all been partners for more than 20 years, with Bob as of course, really a key part of that. So this is a case where the film is kind of understated. He's done so many more things that aren't even in there, which is quite amazing. But I want to talk a little bit about the parts that caught my attention, which is Bob's sense of humor, which I think is really worth talking about. And I thought I'd give you just a few tidbits from Bob over the years, because he has a great way of expressing himself that is both a little bit humorous and definitely teaching. You know, he's very knowledgeable about institutional investing and how institutions think about real estate, invest in real estate. And the comment that I remember so well is he says, well, institutional investors will spend 2 minutes reading your business plan and 2 weeks trying to figure out what fees you're getting. So he really helped us over the years with that. And then he got transferred at one point to the East Coast to start something, and he had this to say about that. He said, on the East Coast, they ask you where you went to school. On the West Coast, they ask you where you exercise. The real estate business, as many of you know, has scads and scads of complications and entities and so forth. So Bob, at one of our board meetings, says to all of us, we have so many entities around here, I don't have the slightest idea what I own or what it's worth. And we all looked at him and said, well, welcome to the real estate business, Bob. The other kind of business, Wall Street got into the real estate business, of course, in a big way, and that's been one of the huge changes over the years. And AMB changed from a real estate investment advisor, a boutique advisor, to an REIT. But Bob had a way of thinking about Wall Street that I thought was always great. He said, when you think of the boys from Wall Street, think about a fee-seeking missile. Then he also has a very good understanding of risk in the business, and more so than some of us who get a little bit wild-eyed at times and get into this, that, and the other thing. And I remember at one point at a board meeting, he said, I'm very happy to get in that deal. Can I be a limited partner? So anyway, he's an extraordinary person with a great sense of humor and a great sort of way of expressing himself. And I'd like to introduce my partner and my friend, Bob Burke, who I think is something more than special. Thank you.
I'm really honored to share tonight with Sam Freshman, and I'm very impressed with him and his accomplishments. I want to thank SPIRE for this honor. It has been a pleasure working with the SPIRE staff and the people who put this program together. And I want to thank my wife, Kathy, and my children for their support. If you can believe this, Kathy is in Madagascar at this moment in connection with her global health work, so she could not join us. I also want to express my gratitude to my co-founders. At AMB, now Prologis, they were Hamid Moghadam and Doug Abbey. At IHP Capital, as you just heard, it was Doug Neff and Don Grant, who are here tonight. And at Metropolitan, they were David Sherman and David Nassau. Without them, the companies I've been involved with simply could not have succeeded. Between the written materials you received and the video you've seen, you've already learned more about me than I think you probably ever wanted to know. So in the brief time that I have, I'd like to address my comments to the younger people here tonight and to talk about striking a balance between professional objectives and other priorities in your lives. As a young person, I was quite idealistic and dreamed of careers that somehow would change the world. I fell short in that regard and learned early on that my responsibilities to support myself and my family required me to find work in an environment in which I could be reasonably successful. So I found myself practicing real estate law and eventually moving into real estate investment. Throughout the first 20-plus years of my career, I was able to find some time for civic engagement as a volunteer with nonprofits, but mostly I was focused on establishing myself professionally. After AMB became a public company, I continued to work, but I had the opportunity, really the luxury, to donate a greater portion of my time to volunteer and philanthropic activities. I found this very gratifying intellectually and professionally. It brought rewards beyond financial rewards, and it permitted me to express some of the idealistic urges of my younger days. It gave balance and diversity to my activities, which I have appreciated greatly. My point is that the choice to diligently pursue a career need not be a choice to abandon one's other interests. There's room in our lives to be active in more than one realm, you do not have to commit to a one-dimensional existence. And you need to find time to enjoy yourselves with family, friends, and recreation. Indeed, I'm happy to say that some of the most interesting people I know are also very successful in their careers. We all know successful people who are driven and one-dimensional, but that doesn't have to be you. I would like to tell you that in my volunteer life, I've had a wide array of amazing experiences unrelated to real estate. However, as you saw in the video, I've consistently been asked to help out in real estate-related ways. As a Stanford trustee, I spent 7 years as the chair of the Land and Buildings Committee that oversaw all of the real estate operations and included a number of projects some of you would know of, the Clark Center, Engineering Quad, Arriaga Alumni Center, and others. In addition, we negotiated the general use permit, which established Stanford's entitlements for the next 15 to 20 years. At the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco, I was on the building committee for the New de Young and on the board of the nonprofit that designed and built the underground parking garage between the de Young and the Academy of Science building. Indeed, the only brass plaque anywhere with my name on it is in an underground parking garage. On the Presidio Trust Board, we oversaw a national park that is, in certain respects, a 1,500-acre mixed-use real estate project and the largest historic rehab project in the country. And at the Exploratorium, I was asked to join the board, but I declined and agreed instead to serve on the building committee that designed and built the new facility on the bay. And finally, as mentioned in the video, at UCSF, I was asked to serve as the volunteer lead negotiator for the acquisition of the Mission Bay campus. We succeeded in convincing Catellis Corporation and the city that it was in their best interest to give UCSF the 40-plus acres that became the initial campus. The activities I have just described were hard work, but they were extremely satisfying and challenging and fun. They were as successful and as important as anything I did in my private sector work. I see many accomplished real estate professionals here tonight who I know have also contributed important time and effort to successful civic activities, and I want to acknowledge them for all that they have done. For those of you who are still getting started, I wish you great success in your professional and volunteer lives. I hope that your efforts will greatly benefit our communities. You will be glad you did it. Thank you very much.
Let's make sure we get the right one there. There you go.
So I hope you'll indulge us. We're here tonight to honor Bob and Sam, but we thought we might take this opportunity to also honor Chad Hagel. So at his Stanford reunion in 2008, they had some time on their hands, being real estate guys, and they decided to put SPIRE together to bring the Stanford alumni community and real estate together. It was his idea. He then went so far as to not only have it be a Stanford alumni club, but he leaned in that much farther and established a 501c3 status and then hired employees, which was reasonably audacious. The university wasn't quite sure how to take it. So from 2009 to today, it's been through Chad's efforts, his tenacity, his genuine love for the university, that SPIRE's grown into what it's become. And this is his last year as president of SPIRE. When he comes back next year, he'll be a board member, but no longer president. We really wanted to take the opportunity tonight to recognize his service for all that he's done. And there isn't anyone more qualified to describe this experience than my predecessor, Andy Wahlberger. Andy and Chad met on Chad's first 5 days on campus. They were both living in Branner, which is a freshman dorm. All freshman dorm used to be on campus. And they've known one another a long time, and Chad called on Andy to build SPIRE for 4.5 years before Andy returned to the private sector a few months ago. So I welcome Andy Wahlberger to talk about Chad and his history with the organization.
Thanks for this opportunity. I'm going to be brief, but we really want to take this opportunity, as Elizabeth mentioned, 8 years ago on October 10th. So if you can think of what was happening in the economy in the United States in 2008 in October, there was just total chaos. And we had our 10-year anniversary, and we thought, wouldn't it be great to get some insight and wisdom from our senior alumni? And we hatched a plan to create an alumni organization. And Chad was really at the core of that. And I want to just describe 3 characteristics of Chad that has really put SPIRE where it is today, and those are generosity, perseverance, and vision. In the beginning, Chad spent more than 50% of his time building SPIRE. And still to this day, there are several weeks where he's spending over 50% of his time on SPIRE. And he's been very generous with financial backing of student initiatives and our operations to make SPIRE the success it is today. Perseverance. Chad does not back down from a challenge. SPIRE has faced numerous tough spots along our path. University interactions, financial struggles, staffing, among others. I've always been impressed with Chad, his grace under pressure, and his attitude of let's solve today what we can be solved today and not worry about tomorrow that is out of our control. And then third is vision. In SPIRE's first few months under Chad's leadership, we established the 3 pillars of SPIRE, which are professional networking and development, student outreach, and university educational development. 8 years later, these 3 pillars form the core of everything that SPIRE does. While most of the other board members and certainly the university officials are completely flabbergasted by the growth and achievement of SPIRE, this is really an embodiment of Chad's vision. He has always set the bar high and has been the first to roll up his sleeves and make the dream a reality. So here we are, 6 years later, at our 6th Hall of Fame event. Approximately 2,000 SPIRE members, 100 real estate council members, impacting over 100 students a year, and the only Stanford Alumni Club with a full-time staff. None of this would be possible without Chad Hagel, his generosity, perseverance, and vision. I raise my glass to you in appreciation and in a tribute. Chad.
So my work is not quite done. As the desserts are being served, it's very much a treat for me as we move through the evening to honor Sam Freshman. As I said earlier, Sam is that consummate networker and relationship builder. To me, Sam has also always been like a second grandfather. He's someone who's helped me throughout the years we've known each other and has always been there as a source of advice and sage wisdom. I always wanted to do a deal with Sam. I tried no fewer than 5 times over the past half-decade to find a deal that we could do together. Sam follows a very simple but effective model: buy low, sell high. As many times as we tried, we never found a deal that we could pursue together. I remember Sam saying distinctly many times, "Chad, you may make money in your business, but I cannot understand how you can afford to pay the prices you pay for real estate." Maybe you're starting to see a trend here of me not being able to do deals with anyone, and it is very much the case. But these interactions with gentlemen like Bob and Sam have helped me form 2 of the most important guiding principles in my life. One is that failure is the most important first step towards success. And the other is that sometimes the best deals are the ones you don't do. It's from being blessed with mentors like Bob and Sam that I've been able to get where I am in my own career. Sam, I want to thank you very much for all those deals we didn't do. And thank you most of all for the one that we did. Stanford Professionals in Real Estate, SPIRE. Many of you have heard me say it before, but it is the truth, and I'll repeat it here again tonight. There would be no SPIRE without Sam Freshman. Please enjoy this tribute.
I'm Samuel K. Freshman. I grew up in Michigan, lived in Huntington Woods, graduated from Royal Oak High School with a modest academic record. But in those days, it was not too hard to get into college. I was very fortunate. I wanted to go to California, and I discovered that the furthest away I could go from home was Palo Alto, California. And the line went right through Stanford University. I applied, and fortunately, by the time I was ready to graduate from law school, my father had bought a business in Pasadena, California, and he said, go into real estate, that's where all the money's made in California. So I took his advice, and the rest is history, I guess.
Sam was always interested in entrepreneurial opportunities, and I was always full of entrepreneurial opportunities, but I just didn't have any money. I remember in one case we looked at the Malibu theater deal, and I think what happened there is he liked maybe the deal, but I don't think I passed the ARDIT test. So he passed on that deal, and that deal was incredibly successful and lucrative, and of course he lived in Malibu at the time, so every weekend he would come to the movie theater and see how successful it was. So the next time around, we had an opportunity in Hawaii. And in order to make that happen, I had to have lunch with Sam and Ardith along with my mother. They wanted to see, you know, what the whole family scene was like. So we had that lunch at Sam's Country Club in Malibu at the time. And the lunch lasted a couple hours, and I guess I passed the test because Sam put in a couple $1,000,000 as a result of my mother attending the lunch with me. So I thank my mom and I thank Sam for that, and I think Ardith was the final say on it. And then that transaction turned out to be a huge winner. He got back 5 times his money in less than 2.5 years. So that really started a long-term successful relationship with Sam and Ardith.
I think he saw the future in real estate, because even if times are bad, if you own real estate, you still have something to look at. It isn't a piece of paper. So I think he understood that.
I've done other things as well, but it's always had something to do with real estate. And by 1983, my side business of investing in real estate was doing much better than law practice. But in 1 year, about 1981 or 82, I put together a deal where I made more money than I made in the 20 some odd years of practicing law, and I said, that's it. Even though I like the law, I can't afford it anymore. And I went full-time over to Standard Management, which is a company I started probably around 1962, and had other people running it until about 83, when I went full-time into that.
I met Sam in 1986 when I went to work for him. He chose to hire me as controller. It was an incredible opportunity for me because Sam was a teacher, he is still a teacher, and he also provided us with an amazing amount of opportunity to advance rapidly through his organization. I started out as controller. Within a couple of years I was CFO, and a couple of years after that they made me vice president of finance, which was very exciting for me. And then in the 8 years that I worked for him, everything I knew about real estate I learned from him.
Sam said something I think his father told him, it may have even been his grandfather, once to me that I never forgot. He said, Stender, if you don't want to read about it tomorrow in the newspaper, don't do it. And I think that's very typical of Sam in the way he approaches not only his business, but all of his personal relationships. He's a man with a great deal of integrity.
We had invested in lots of apartment houses, And we decided to invest in some hotels. And we found out very quickly that we didn't know anything about the hotel business, and we decided to sell and get out. And I wanted to take the loss in that year to offset some other gains. And Sam said, don't worry about it, I'll buy you out so you can take your loss right now. So 6 months went by, and I heard from Sam, and he said, well, we closed the deal, and we had the good fortune of selling the liquor license separate from the hotel, so I've got a check for you. The next day, when I opened the mail, there was a check for $160,000. I don't think there are a lot of syndicators that I've met in my lifetime who would have treated that particular deal that generous way. They would have said, hey, I did you a favor, you got out, you didn't stick around for the bad, so when the good happens, you're out of luck. Not Sam.
The numbers on the deal either work or they don't, and you have to be careful not to fall in love with the project. I made that mistake once or twice and held on too long. I also found that although I've done some development, that at least for me, it's often easier to buy an existing project than to build one, and cheaper. I've owned property in about 15 states and maybe 27 metropolitan areas, but I probably should have just stuck closer to home. It would have done a lot better than jumping all around the country.
Well, one of Sam's admirable characteristics is his strive for youth and staying young, and he attributes a lot of that to the office and to working. And he works to stay young, he says. At the same time, he'll tell you that he's never worked a day in his life.
Sam is the ultimate networker. He will walk into any room with a stack of business cards this high, and he'll walk out with a stack of business cards this high. But he'll walk in with his business cards and he'll walk out with everyone else's. And I've seen Sam repeat that masterful networking performance over and over again in every room that he walks into.
The other fundamental piece too is how important mentoring has been in his life, and taking the time to give lectures or write books and really give back to an industry that has been so important to him and made him so successful is a wonderful thing to see.
In 1971, I wrote a book about real estate syndication that became quite popular. I think it sold over 50,000 copies, and it's still selling.
I mean, we've all seen his book, the red book, him with the pile of money, and while, you know, maybe a little sort of honed and exaggerated as book art cover, but captures the truth, you know, we all know that there's so much more to Sam than just about that pile of money. It's about the people and about learning along the way, too.
The thing I'm most proud of is that Chad Hagel came to me about 6 or 7 years ago, he and his friends, and they were forming this Real Estate Alumni Association. And they wanted somebody, I guess, older to be, and asked if I would go on the board.
When we met Sam, when we engaged with him, when we learned of his position in the alumni community, his position in the business community, his legacy, he literally wrote the book on real estate syndication. We realized that he's not just a businessman, but he's an educator, and he believes in helping people grow professionally and helping people to excel in their profession. So it's very, very fitting that as Tim is stepping down as the chairman of the board of SPIRE, that the organization that he helped found and the platform that he helped found in the Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame is honoring him and honoring his legacy, both to Stanford and to SPIRE.
Well, I think the main thing, which was the thing that my parents taught me, that the most important thing is family.
When we met, I was teaching school, and Sam had just graduated from Stanford Law School. and came down to Beverly Hills. And my aunt gave him my phone number. He called me.
We were engaged in 10 days. And we did decide we'd have a 7-month engagement to make sure we really were doing the right thing. And we've been married 57 years.
Soon after that, we had 4 daughters, 7 years between the oldest and youngest. And we always did everything together as a family.
Well, one of the great things was that he always would spend the time on Sundays to be with us. Even if he was really, really busy, even if he had a giant case, he'd always spend time to be with us on Sunday.
One of the fond memories that I have with my dad is going horseback riding with him when I was a little girl, and with the entire family as well. He developed the Malibu Riding and Tennis Club because when he was young, he had said he had great times as a camp counselor. So he wanted us to have that experience. And we would go every weekend and ride together as a family.
Some of my fondest memories of my dad are when we'd play board games together, specifically Monopoly and Stocks and Bonds. I think those were his 2 favorite games, and quite frankly, the only games that we played. I mean, how cool is that, to be able to play Monopoly with a real estate professional? These are really great, fun bonding times where we were able to enjoy each other and play a game. And Dad was also able to teach us about real estate and investments through this play.
My father's very inspirational. He's been a mentor to a lot of people. He put together a book of quotes called The Principles for Success for Love and Work. He's also shown us that hard work really pays off, because he built his own business. He's done so many things helping other people build their businesses. A lot of people would work for him for a number of years, and he really wanted them to go off on their own and encourage them to start their own companies or their own businesses and be successful.
He really has a unique vision in this regard, and I believe that the investment community recognizes him for this.
He's a legend in the real estate business. He's been enormously successful. He's completed a ton of transactions, and he's mentored a lot of people. It's not just me. And I think he takes a lot of pride in all the people that he has mentored, and that he's kicked out of the nest over the years.
He is a wonderful man. He's a family man, a great business person, and truly a mentor to a lot of people.
But I think he really has been wonderful, and I think he was everything that I had hoped that he would be.
He will never buy something that's priced too high, and he will never sell at the wrong time.
Don't make the 2 mistakes I've made. I didn't buy enough and I sold too soon.
One of the things that the film doesn't mention is that Sam is a ladies' man. Surrounded by 4 daughters at home and his wife of 57 years, Ardith.
The wife and daughter.
The wife and daughters. So I think they drew straws, and the 3rd daughter, I'm the 3rd of 4, so the 3rd daughter drew the shortest straw, and she's here tonight to talk about her father. And what's been so touching in the process of preparing for tonight is how bonded these women are. The fact that they were born, raised, and have all continued to live in LA because they like one another so much, and they like their parents so much. And I think that's a real tribute to Sam. So Sam's 3rd daughter, Brenda, is a clinical psychologist and a professor at Cal State Long Beach.
Organizational psychologist.
Excuse me, thank you.
There's a difference.
Thank you.
I will begin. Well, the video does a terrific job elucidating the 5 major themes that best describe my father's character and success. Various business ventures, the importance of networking, the necessity of doing the right thing, and his passion for mentoring whomever is lucky enough to cross his path or read one of his books. And last but not least, family, is the most important thing, in his own words. I'm honored to be joined here on stage by our mother, Ardith, and my three sisters, Elena, Elise, and Cheryl. The foundation of these themes can be traced back to his times at Stanford University, where he achieved both his undergraduate and law degrees. During this time at Stanford, his talents for leadership and service bloomed as he held a variety of notable positions. Advertising manager for the Stanford Daily, president of El Tigre Eating Club, historian for the class of 1954, president of Crothers Hall, the law dormitory, and president of the Axe Society, a student and alumni public relations service club, to name only a few of his leadership roles on campus. Let's take a moment. Look around the room. Feel the energy. See who's at your table. See who's at the table next to you. See who's across the room. Hey, it's been a long time. Hey, how are you? All right? As SPIRE's first chairman, it is my father's leadership and love for Stanford that in large part brings us here together today. I will briefly share 3 stories from his time on campus that reflect his creative, unstoppable entrepreneurial spirit and love for life. In his freshman year, Dad had a roommate, Steve, whose mother worked for the wardrobe department at a major movie studio. Now, the two of them thought it would be great fun for them to take a studios tour at the upcoming summer break. So they asked Steve's mom about it, and for whatever reason, she was unable to make the arrangement. Well, Dad did not accept no for an answer. He came up with an idea. You see, he worked for the Stanford Daily at the time, writing a column and selling advertising space. So he pitched the idea that he was investigating how movies impact students for the paper. Lo and behold, he not only got the studio tour, but he got 3 private tours at all the major studios at the time and 2 interviews with 2 top brass at the studios. And as a bonus, he was able to take his photographer along, his roommate, Steve. The second story is a foreshadowing of his enterprising career in real estate. You see, my father rented a large house and sublet rooms to about 12 boarders. This rental income covered his basic living expenses. Oh no, but he didn't stop there. Realizing that residence halls and eating clubs on campus did not serve Saturday night dinners, some of you remember that, he came up with an alternative plan to serve the hungry students, offering a rent reduction to his boarders for their assistance. He and they would cook and serve all-you-could-eat spaghetti, hamburger, and salad for $1.25 on Saturday nights. Now, these meals would only cost 50 cents on average. So do the math. Every weekend, he made $75 net profit on these meals. Now, back in 1953, that was a lot of money. According to the internet site Dollar Times, it's about $665 of buying power today. Well, Dad's love of all things Stanford continued after his graduation, as he shared his experiences with us, particularly during our annual family vacations to the beautiful Stanford Sierra Camp at Fallen Leaf Lake. There are so many great memories of these times, learning Stanford songs, and we took the long drive up the coast, spending time in nature with family, fishing, hiking, canoeing, sailing. Well, sailing. Not really our forte. As I recall, one precious time with my dad, it was just he and I on a small little sailboat, enjoying the sun, the water, the wind, and whoosh, a big gust came by and capsized our tiny little boat. I felt helpless and I was panicked and afraid, but my dad, calm, cool, collected, reassuring me that all would be okay. Thank goodness for the life vests that kept us afloat and the Stanford lifeguards that promptly rescued us from the freezing water, because it was cold water if you've ever been in that lake. A bit shaken up at the time, we recovered with warm cider and a change into dry clothes. What remains in my heart with me and my family are fond memories of challenge, survival, and an appreciation of the great outdoors. So, if anyone tells you no in life, remember Sam Freshman and be true to your own creative, unstoppable spirit in reaching your goals. That's what we have learned from our dad. On behalf of our mom and my sisters, congratulations, Dad. We love you.
I want to thank my wife and family for all of the support and encouragement they have given me throughout my career, particularly with regard to my responsibilities in SPIRE as chairman for the last 5 years. I think it's 6, but I can't count that high. I also want to thank Stanford University and Stanford Law School for providing me with 6 years of a wonderful education experience which has created many great memories. My sincere thanks go to the many members of SPIRE, the SPIRE Board of Directors and staff, Howard Wolf and Judy Heller of the Alumni Association, the 1,500 guest members, 500 regular members, and the SREC Council, with only 2 members short of its goal of 100 members. None of these could have happened without the help of many people, including the members and friends of SPIRE. And all of those of you who I've forgotten to mention. Could all the people that have belonged to those organizations, SPIRE, SREC, and been involved with SPIRE, stand up, please. Stand up. Come on. Don't be shy. Andy, thank you. These are the people that have created SPIRE. Together, we've overcome early skepticism about what could be accomplished. SPIRE is now playing a major role in real estate education at Stanford, in architecture, engineering, financial studies, development, and law. It was my honor to be able to offer guidance, strategy, and mentorship along the way. But frankly, I didn't do very much work. All the rest of these people who stood up did the work. I just took the credit. I've been fortunate to have had many mentors when I was at Stanford and throughout my career. I credit them with much of my success. I am asked often how to become rich in real estate. My answer is, I've made lots of mistakes, tried to do them only once, and have lived a long time. So make a lot of mistakes, learn from them, and live a long time. I'm still learning every day. When there are challenges, we may have a tendency to blame others or our circumstances. Quite often the problem is because of something we have done ourselves. I try to look at myself rather than at others for both the cause and for the solution. In many cases, my successes were a result of being lucky, of being in the right place at the right time. It is much better to be lucky than smart, but to be smart is to prepare for all possible problems. Luck is often simply a matter of preparation. Our company's mantra is Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will. But we always add that Murphy was an optimist. I've had the opportunity to play many different roles in my professional life. Here's what I have learned from some of my business and personal experience. As a board chairman, I learned start board meetings on time and keep them focused. Prepare an agenda and stick to it. If the discussion strays, and those of you on the board know this trick, call for an early vote or refer it to a committee. As a borrower, I learned shop for competitive bids for loans, just as you do for any other product. You heard my friend Stender today. It's the banker and not the bank that determines the outcome of your loan. As a lender, I learned be cautious about anyone who offers more than the current market rate. As a business partner, I learned you need to have strong compatibility with your partner and that you and your partner need to share in the decision making. As a networker, I learned always carry business cards. As a public speaker, I learned give the audience what they came to hear and not what you came to sell. As a college professor and lecturer, I learned you learn, as the professor, more from the students than they do from you. As a competitive horseback rider, I learned sometimes the horse knows better than you, or you end on the ground. As a husband, father, and grandfather, I learned to always be available for your family, be sensitive to their needs, and look for opportunities for quality time together. As a young man and an overnight camp counselor, I learned keep your campers busy learning and most importantly, having fun. And finally, as a student, I learned never stop learning. For the students that are here in the audience, I have a little bit of advice. When I was at Stanford, and as I was listening to Bob, he seemed to take the same approach. I learned as much outside of class as I learned in class. Be active and involved and never stop learning. Have the courage to ask for what you want. You will be surprised how often you get it. Treat everyone honestly and fairly. Set reasonable goals, but when you reach them, raise the bar higher. I want to give special thanks to Chad and his friends for a wonderful experience as chairman of SPIRE. I intend to continue my support and involvement as chairman emeritus, just as my plans are never to retire and continue my professional and business activities as long as I am able. Please take my thanks for attending this dinner, and hopefully we'll see you all next year.
So a great thank you to Sam for everything he's done. And every year at this time in the program, we also add one additional tribute. And there's a little bit of a story behind it. This chair that you see sitting behind me comes from a mason, a woodcrafter rather, in China. A few years ago, SPIRE took its first international excursion to China, supported by many of our member firms, and we toured the Stanford Institute at Peking University. And the woodcrafter that created all of the woodwork at the Stanford Institute and Peking University has every year for us crafted one of these chairs for each one of our Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame honorees, so that they can literally have a chair at the table with all of their other fellow honorees. So we present this chair to Sam in appreciation of everything he's done for Stanford and everything he's done for SPIRE. So thank you very much, Sam. And finally, to close out the evening, there's one more thing that I want to do to show that I've actually learned from Sam's tutelage over the years. And that is, as I shared in the video, Sam will always walk into a room with a giant stack of business cards. And I happen to come here tonight with a giant stack of business cards. The other thing that Sam has always done at every single board meeting we've had is to say, when you all leave this meeting, go out and talk to everyone you work with and say, does anyone in your real estate company come from Stanford University? Because they ought to be a SPIRE member. The other thing that Sam will always say at the end of every board meeting and every public opportunity is to say, remind everyone that you don't actually have to even be a Stanford alum to be a member of SPIRE. We have a special membership designation, Friends of SPIRE, so that every single person in this entire room can join the organization. So I'm going to up Sam's game one more level tonight, and that is that if they haven't already been passed out to your tables, on your way out, take one of my business cards. Any one of you that emails me in the next week saying that you want to join SPIRE, I will cover your membership for the next year. And that's my gift to you as I step down as president and retire from this organization. So take advantage of my gift, take advantage of my generosity, become part of the SPIRE family, and enjoy SPIRE for everything that it is. Thank you, Sam, for your inspiration, and thank you for everything you've done. And to all of you, have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.